Hello, Inspired Nation, and happy Sunday, everybody. I hope that you are all well. I hope you had a restorative weekend. Welcome to today's video. If you're tuning in for the very first time, my name is Yeyisa Gunene, and this is Inspired Nation. You are welcome to make this channel your home. We come to you every Sunday, bringing you inspirational content to keep you motivated throughout the week. But most importantly, we are here to help you set your mindset straight, to start your week having primed yourself for positivity and having set intentions to keep yourself achieving throughout the week. We do that by giving you content that is going to keep you encouraged and inspired. Welcome, everybody. So today I want to talk about a subject that is very familiar to most of us. This is something we almost all go through, and if you have not yet gone through it, rest assured you will at some point. So this content is always going to be helpful for you to remember what to do. And the topic is when God is silent. When God is silent. I've already mentioned that this is something that almost every person goes through. And if you have not yet, you will feel it at some point. So be ready. So, we all go through seasons of spiritual dryness, seasons of lacking food, money, true meaningful connections with other people. It could be friendships or romantic relationships, or lack of joy, lack of peace, lack of fulfillment. Losing loved ones sometimes causes us to feel that silence or feel that aloneness. Going through traumatic experiences and disappointments and setbacks. All of it speaks to feeling alone, and all of it presents a season of emptiness, loneliness, and dryness, and this causes us to feel as though God is silent. And mark my words, it's a feeling as though God is silent, but is He really? So what do we really mean, when we say God is silent? Has He really left us? What does it mean when we feel this way? At least for me and from my perspective, most of the time when we feel this way, it is because we struggle to accept certain negative things that might have happened to us, or sometimes we do things that hurt others or hurt ourselves, intentionally or unintentionally, and we punish ourselves and feel disconnected from God just because we are guilty of whatever we would have done. Or when something tragic happens, we feel as though we are just by ourselves. Why would God let it happen to us? Sometimes it's losing jobs, it's losing relationships, losing a home, loved ones, failing interviews, or even failing at school, and we get stuck on trying to figure out how can we move on from there. It's really that feeling of emptiness, of loneliness, of feeling stuck. Sometimes it's because there's not many meaningful relationships that we have. Sometimes it's being stuck on a job. Sometimes it's a business not taking off nicely. Sometimes it's lack itself, as I've already mentioned. But the biggest question that we ask ourselves most of the time is the how. How will I move on from here? How can I get over this? We ask ourselves. How will I pay my debts? How will I survive without parents? How will I find love after this failed relationship or marriage? How will I love again after being hurt so much? How will I ever heal from being violated? How will I heal from this betrayal? How can this darkness and heavy weight ever be lifted off me? We ask ourselves the how. How can this situation ever change? How will I have my beautiful life again? How can this be? How will I ever get through this? How? All of these how questions really bother us a lot, and yet we often don't realize that we don't usually have the answers, because honestly, the how is not ours. The how is not ours. Ours is to trust. Ours is loyalty. Ours is leaning towards somebody greater. The how is not ours. So God knows how. God knows how. He knows. He knows. God knows how to do what we cannot do. What seems like a giant, He knows how to bring down, like He did for David. What seems to be the deepest pit where we find ourselves, where we think our lives would literally be consumed, like Daniel, He knows how to pull us out of it all. God knows how. God knows how to perform miracles and bring manna in a desert. He knows how. Even things that have never been done before, He has done so many firsts, and He knows. He knows how. God knows how to help you to forgive and let go. God knows how to be there with you and for you. God knows how. God knows how to heal your most painful wounds. He knows how. He knows how to give you a brand new life and forgive you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. He knows how to be there for you. He knows how to make your life whole again. He knows how to make your life good again, great again. He knows how to cause you to succeed. He knows how to lift you up. God knows how. God knows how to give you a new way of thinking, a new way of life. He says, be ye transformed by the renewal of your minds. He has the solutions. He knows the solutions are in transforming our minds. He knows how. He knows how. God knows how to deliver you from the bondage that has kept you captive. He delivered the children of Israel from the hard hand of Pharaoh because God knows how, my friends. God knows how. God knows how to set you free. God is bigger than your circumstances. God is bigger than you. God is all that is. God knows how. Sometimes we pray for situations to change, but they don't. We have to have the spiritual insight to discern that sometimes it is us that need to change. When we lack that spiritual clarity, we change for the worse. We become vengeful and spiteful and bitter and angry. When situations do not change, we need to go within and look at the situation through a different spiritual eye, because sometimes it is indeed us that need to change. It is us that are called to change. Then the situation will be viewed from a different perspective and will not affect us the way that it did before. Sometimes the situation may not change, or you may continue to bleed because you are the one that needs to move away from that situation. I'll share with you a brief story that was related by Les Brown in one of his videos about a couple that used to take walks every afternoon. And this couple noted in one household that there used to be a couple that would sit outside, an old couple sitting outside basking in the sun, and there was a dog nearby crying in agony. Could see that the dog was in pain, and the couple seemingly wasn't bothered about that. So they passed through the same house or home the next day. They saw the same situation, and they said, you know what, third day, if you see the same type situation, we're going to reach out and point them out to the dog. They did that on the third day because the situation was still the same. They said, hey, we see your dog here, da-da-da. And the couple politely said, oh, yes, we know. He knows that there's a nail underneath him, but he just won't move from there. And he's continuing to bleed right there. So, I love the story because it made me see things from a very different perspective. The fact that sometimes God points us what the problem is. He points to the problem and says, this is the problem, and he leaves us to do the action, to take the action. And most of the time we do not, because we somehow strongly believe that, this is what it's supposed to be. We want to be in control. We want familiar ground. We want to stick with the things that we know. And yet they continue to cause us to bleed. They continue to cause us to be in pain. And at some point would cost us our lives, just like in the story. So sometimes it is us that need to move away from a situation. It may not be changing, and we think that God is silent because the situation is not changing. And yet God has pointed out what the problem is. We need to take action. Now, I want to ask you, will you trust God completely when he points out what the problem is, and take the action regardless of how painful it is to do so, regardless of how difficult it is to move away from what's familiar to you, your usual way of doing things? Will you trust him completely? You know the wisdom of your inner voice, your inner being. Will you trust him when he says it's time to move on? Will you trust him when he says you are the problem, and yield your need to seem to be in control? Will you trust him? Will you trust that he knows how, and let go of trying to be in control and yield and just hand it over to him? Hand it all over to him. He knows how. Will you trust him when he says all things are working together for your good, even when you do not see any of that good? You can choose to trust his word. Will you trust him? I ask you, will you trust God? Will you trust that his plans are to prosper you? Is there anything too hard for the Lord? Is there? Is there? Really, is there? Do you believe? Will you trust that there is nothing too hard for him, and that he knows how? Trust him. He's going to point to you just a step to take. He's not going to give you the how fully. You have to trust him and take the step, because he knows how. So give up the trust that you have on a friend and thinking that they are your source. Give up the trust in thinking that your business is your source, your job is your source. Give up the need to be validated by others. Give up the need to want to think that others are your help other than God. Give up the leaning on your own understanding and pursue God first. And all these things shall be added unto you. He is not silent. He is right there with you always. He wants you to give up trusting other things and other people and hand it all over to him. He knows how. God knows how. Inspired Nation, that's all I had for you today. Have a wonderful week ahead.